Okay, we're back, and I want to thank you again. As Tara said, this is our first Palace Virtual Summit, so we're still working out some of those kinks. I do want to say another special thank you to John Wilkin for joining us for today, for his opening remarks from the road, and for his continued support of Palace. In our first full session of the day, Michael Atwood will join us again to moderate a panel discussion with some of our biggest supporters, our state library stakeholders. And I'd like to formally welcome them as follows. Amy Fontaine from Ocean State Libraries of Rhode Island, Angela Stanley with Georgia Public Library Service, Lauren Kelly with the Vermont Department of Libraries, Chris Durr with California State Library, and last but not least, Brad Bullis of Connecticut State Library. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael.
Thanks, Joe. So hi everyone again. Just in case anyone missed the opening remarks, my name is Michael Atwood. I'm the Senior Director at the eBooks Community Engagement Division here at Lyrasis. I want to welcome everyone to the State Library Stakeholder Panel. For this panel, we've gathered a fantastic group of State Library partners to share their organization's unique experiences with the Palace Project. We're going to kind of follow a round robin format, and we will plan to leave some time at the end for questions. But I think we're going to probably take up a lot of the time here, so I want to go ahead and dive right in. I think first to kick off, I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves and share how long they have been a part of the Palace Project. So, Amy, how about you first?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. I'm the Collection Management Director for Ocean State Libraries, which is the consortium of 48 public libraries in Rhode Island. And I am new to my position just under a year, so I started with Palace last November, but Rhode Island had done a soft launch about 2 years ago.
Great, thank you. Angela.
Thanks, Michael. I'm Angela Stanley over here in Georgia. And the state has been live with Palace for almost exactly a year now. So we got started in, I want to say, I think it was July of last year, and getting libraries, our initial round of libraries live and online in September.
Great. Lauren?
Hi there, thanks for the welcome. I'm Lauren Kelly with the Vermont Department of Libraries, and our Palace project launched in the summer of 2022, so it has been 3 years, and that was just after I joined the department, and I've been very involved with collection development and rollout adaptation, which we'll get more into today.
Great, thank you. And Chris?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Durr. I'm a library programs consultant with the California State Library. I believe California joined onto this project either in late 2021 or early 2022. It was originally funded through CARES money from the federal government.
Yep. And finally, Brad.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everybody. I am the Digital Content and Innovation Coordinator for the Connecticut State Library Division of Library Development. I oversee the Requested program, which is our interlibrary loan platform, our Research at CT program, which is our database platform, and then the EgoCT program, which is our ebook platform. The relationship and the program for ebooks started for us with work in around 2014, which predates my tenure at the Connecticut State Library. But we started work and kind of came up with a plan, and we started with Simply E in 2019, started training people and launched Simply E effectively to public libraries in 2020. So early 2020, we started making libraries live with Simply E. And so we worked for a little bit with Simply E, had a great relationship with Lyrasis. They presented the opportunity to switch to the Palace Project. And so once that was available, which was in 2022, we jumped right on board with that and started getting our libraries on board. We brought in public libraries, and we have also brought in academic libraries at this point. And that's really kind of where we are in the program at this time.
Great. Thank you. So what I want to do is kind of go through each person and have each of you describe what was the vision and sort of the goal of deciding to go with the Palace Project. for your respective organizations. And we'll go round robin again because I think everyone is going to have a lot to say. So we'll go ahead and start with Amy.
Okay, so like I said, all the public libraries in Rhode Island are part of the consortium. So we were able to kind of launch Palace statewide a couple of years ago, but it just didn't take hold, even though the people making that decision were really excited about the Palace model with its flexibility and its broader access. It just, we couldn't get it to take hold. So when I started in November to kind of relaunch, I realized that we had to not make it a choice of, we're an overdrive Libby state right now, and not to make it a choice of leaving Libby to come to Palace, but kind of align it alongside. And that was a change for us. So our vision was to offer the choice to the patrons rather than us making the choice for them to we're all Libby or we're all Palace. It was let's just offer them what we have and let them make the decision that works for them. So that was our vision. We did launch in July 1st, 2025, excitedly, and aligning Palace as that option among several options seems to be working for us. So our goal right now is to continue to grow our Palace collection and its patronship in Rhode Island, which is steadily happening over the last 2 months.
Great. And I think you touched on something I want to highlight is that Lyrasis and we approached the Palace project as a complementary software system, not necessarily a replacement for things that the library may be happy with. So Angela, same question to you. So what was the vision and the goal of adopting the Palace project?
Yeah, sure. So the vision for the Palace Project in Georgia is the same as the vision for all of our state library provided services, which is to ensure equitable access to every single library, every single community across the state of Georgia. We really want to make sure that there is a standard expectation that any patron can have when they walk into any public library in the state. We have 60 library systems and 409 individual libraries. Those systems cover extremely rural areas of the state and extremely populous areas of the state. A whole range of demographics. And we really wanted to make sure that every library had an equal crack at providing ebooks and digital audiobooks to their patrons. Because we are one of the younger statewide adopters of Palace, we have had the benefit to learn from the successes of our predecessors. So, big shout out to all of my fellow panelists. And many thank yous for all of the phone calls and support that we received from y'all as we were considering this rollout in Georgia. We had numerous stakeholder conversations, small group discussions. We had, just lots of deliberating over whether this was the right fit. Much like in Connecticut, we had started as in a Simply E rollout in Georgia. We had limited uptake on that. And I feel like, it wasn't the right tool at the right time for us. And so when we started having conversations with Palace in earnest, we really felt like it had grown up and really developed into an extremely robust app, easy to use. But as you've already touched on, most importantly, it gave libraries the choice to, really either utilize Palace or utilize Palace in tandem with their existing locally purchased resources. So that really worked well for us, and it allowed us to give those local libraries control over the content their patrons could access and see. So even more fine-tuned control, the ability to, curate and even suppress certain titles was really a pivotal piece of functionality for us.
Thank you, Angela. So same question to you, Lauren. When y'all looked at using Palace, I'll sort of I'll reframe the question again in case anyone forgot what it was. The vision and the goal and why you say, hey, Palace is something we want to be a part of.
Yeah, so Vermont's vision for the Palace Project has really been to broaden access to digital resources for Vermonters across the state, many of which these communities are very rural with small libraries. Unique to Vermont is that our state has no library systems and very few branch libraries. So our goal has really been to create more of a digital core collection that can be maintained, for longevity for every library in the state. We did take a very collaborative approach with the Green Mountain Library Consortium, which has been coordinating ebook and audiobook content through Overdrive for 15 years in the state. So very much with the mission. We did not want to duplicate that work, but we did want to work in tandem with it. And now participating libraries can access content from that collection as well as state materials and in just one place. So utilizing that vendor neutral functionality was important in us making the decision to go with Palace. And then of course the project is especially beneficial for those who are not part of that consortium. So kind of broadening was our goal.
Great. Something I'm hearing sort of a common thread is access, to other parts, people who might not have been traditionally in the library or part of a large library. One of the things I think that's most interesting about the panel is everyone's libraries are very different sizes from a state perspective. Chris is up next, and California is a huge state. So go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, California is pretty big, both in population and geography here. And our overall vision for the project is really to create a statewide ebook library where every California reader can discover a book that captures the imagination or where they can learn something new. And really, in this implementation, what we found is that one of the sort of ancillary goals is that we create a baseline level of access for every public library in California. Now, California, as I said, is a very large state. That also means it's very diverse. So we have libraries that are funded at, $6 per person in their library jurisdiction, and libraries that are funded at $240 per person in their library jurisdiction. So that disparity of funding often leads to a disparity in access for those communities. But having this statewide architecture where any public library in the state can buy materials in this shared ecosystem and share it with everyone in the state really creates a baseline level of access that just grows and grows and grows and lifts the opportunity for every Californian in order to really meet that vision of finding something that can capture their imagination or help them learn something new. In terms of goals, we really want to see elevated use. Having people have this as their primary resource for ebook reading is definitely a goal that we want to see achieved, and that many library jurisdictions in our state are finding success in. And there's a strange after effect of this goal that we really like, and that is that when you're in a public library that frequently uses Palace, you also find that your other ebook systems and your other digital resources are less stressed and better for your patrons there too. So in the spirit of this being an additive solution rather than a solution that takes over other options, it really helps all your services run more smoothly. And that goal of increasing use of this platform makes those other platforms better and leads to a better experience for Californians, regardless of what their ebook reading platform preference is.
That's great. It sounds I think what we've talked about before is you've seen people who start using Palace continue to use Palace, which probably takes a load off the systems because a lot of people who end up using the Palace project are probably heavy users of the library to begin with, at least initially. So that's exciting. So Bradley, how about you?
So yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks, Chris, for what you said because it generated a couple ideas of some of the impacts that ebooks have had on Connecticut and how we have distributed them. But the vision really started with Ken Wigan, who was our previous state librarian, and what he wanted was basically something that was non-branded and branded a little bit with this Connecticut State Library, but actually branded for the public library themselves. And so we started with public libraries initially. And we started back with simply E. And the idea was to have one-stop shopping so that we could have a collection that was purchased by the Connecticut State Library and have it sit next to and sit adjacent to the Overdrive collections, the RB Digital at the time, other collections, Baker and Taylor as well, that were available, and have them all together in one place. And so that was something that, in terms of ease of use, was really important. And so Simply E sort of started down that path. And I think for us, Simply E was a great sort of test case and learning environment for both us and for lyricists as we work together to try to kind of navigate the limitations that Simply E presented. But as time went by, obviously we were able to move over to the Palace app, and the vision there has really been to bring as many libraries on board. So when we left Simply E, we had about 90 libraries out of 190 public libraries in Connecticut participating. Currently, we have 164 public libraries participating, and the few libraries that really aren't participating are either very wealthy communities who feel like they can have their own ebook collection to support their citizens, and then there are those that don't have the technological expertise to go on board and to connect, or maybe don't even have really a functional ILS. So those limitations create some challenges that we've been trying to work with these sort of underserved populations. And that's again where Lyricist has been so helpful, because they'll meet with me or directly with the library to sort of bring them on board. So, we'll get those last few public libraries in time. But, the other sort of continuing mission obviously is equal access, digital equity, to be able to provide ebooks that supplement ebook collections that public library and academic libraries have, but also to act sometimes as the sole ebook platform for a library, which in many cases that's what we tend to be. And that stress of the system that Chris was talking about, that's something that was sort of a selling point for me as I was trying to sort of make the case for Palace, make the case for the Ego CT program in Connecticut. And what we would do is we would look at all the holds on a particular title in Overdrive and say, you know what, take a look in Palace. That just might be available. And so that changed a little bit of the way we built collections, because we really tried to buy things that were a little bit unique. But we have sort of gone from just buying backlist bestsellers to buying some current bestsellers. And then obviously we have special collections like, Connecticut history, Connecticut authors, service to veterans and military families, workforce development, self-help. So we have many areas that we try to work on that sort of ties into the vision of what we're trying to do these days.
Great, thank you so much. The last bit you're talking about with collections, I think is really interesting. And I want to give the rest of the panelists a chance to sort of talk about a little more detail how they went about building the collections for what they were doing in Palace, and how they went through that and how they thought about it. Amy, let's start with you. If you could just give us a little more detail on y'all's strategy with building out your Palace collections. Oh, we can't hear you.
I knew that was going to happen.
There you go.
When I came aboard and was tasked with kind of relaunching Palace, one of the big questions was, how are people going to access this newly expanded digital collection? And we had concerns about asking our patrons to go to different apps to look at the titles that they wanted. So one of the things that we did in Rhode Island is we developed a digital site through our Aspen integration. We called it Ocean State eZone. You can check it out at ezone.oslri.net. And that's where we launched Palace, right alongside of Overdrive. So when a patron goes to our site, they will see all the variations of titles that we have. So let's say they were looking at The Women by Chris and Hannah. They can see it as an audiobook in Palace. They can see it as an audiobook in Libby. They can see it as a print book. They can see it as an ebook in both places. And if there's holds on it, then it appears red. But oftentimes Palace, because we're only 2 months in, and one of our strategies, thank you, Angela and Brad, for this tip, was to buy several copies of the high demand holds to kind of lure people over to Palace. It's green. So we left it in the hands of the patrons. Do you want to be the 318th person on hold for The Women because you just love Libby so much you can't even think about another app? Or do you want it today, and for the low price of install the Palace app, check it out on our site, and that's just where you access it. And that has really worked for us. Again, putting the choice in the hands of the patrons based on wait time, availability of the title, what app they like better, that is certainly going to factor in. So we feel like putting that choice in the patron's hands has been the best thing for us. That it's like a plug and play, or as Lauren said, vendor neutral approach. It's taken us out of it. And that way we can bring the best selection, shortest wait times, and best experiences. Oh, we can offer all of those, and it's up to the patrons to decide what they're interested in looking at.
Great. Thank you so much. That's awesome. One of the things you mentioned was the deep integration with Aspen Discovery. And it's one of the things Palace we really work on is to try to integrate with everyone who will integrate with Palace. We try to connect all of these disparate discovery systems and content sources together. So
yeah,
Angela,
and I'll just say quick, once people are in Palace, they're staying, right? We're finding the numbers just in 2 months that they are reading their Overdrive, their Libby books in Palace. And we've seen huge checkouts of the Palace bookshelf. So it's like just getting them over there, and that integration seemed to work for us.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so awesome. Okay, so Angela, same question. I think Amy mentioned a little bit about how you've been pulling people using the collection development, but yeah, can you talk about that more?
Sure, yes. I mean, I co-sign everything Amy said. We have used that same strategy to build our statewide shared collection, which every library system that aggregates their locally purchased content into Palace gets a crack at spending money in the statewide collection. So that solved a lot of problems for us, that particular setup, and I'll get to the strategizing in a second. But one of the things that we kept on hearing from libraries in Georgia is that they wanted more money to be able to purchase ebooks. We were able to fund some subgrants with CARES Act and ARPA funds. But really, for us to be able to distribute those subgrants, there was a tremendous burden of administration for each of those contracts for every library system to disseminate those funds. It took a long time. It was not responsive to demand. If the women had come out in 2021, God help us, because we wouldn't have been able to respond to it. So the way that we have set up our procurement in Palace really works well. So again, as I said, if a local library contributes or aggregates its locally purchased content into Palace, then as funds allow, we will make sure that they get a proportional share of the pot to be able to spend in the Palace marketplace or on BiblioBoard content as they decide. Most libraries will use their CERC from Overdrive to drive their decision-making in Palace. And I think that works really well, as Amy already said, to fill the gaps, to bring people over into the app, give them a reason to try something new. One of the key things for us in Georgia is that GPLS, the state library, is not itself a lending library. And so we do not issue library cards. We do not circulate content, sort of directly from the state library. All of those transactions, all of the credit for those CERCs belongs to the libraries. So we never want to be seen as being a competitor with our libraries. We only want to be there to support them. And so Palace offers a wide variety of options for, every state. Every state looks different. So, something like the virtual card might work really well in one context, but in Georgia, that's just really not our approach to library service. So one of the great things is that libraries will still themselves get the credit for the circulation and the holds and everything else, because those patrons are accessing the Palace collection with their local public library card. It's just one more benefit of getting a library card. When we have funds to be able to purchase content sort of centrally, where we're not distributing funds, but we're actually making those collection development decisions, we're doing that in concert with a collections development committee comprised of library staff, and we're usually emphasizing those biblioboard collections where we get perpetual access and simultaneous use, just really trying to make sure that we're extending the impact of those dollars as far as possible.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, one of the things with the sim use perpetual collections is every checkout effectively just lowers your cost per cert forevermore. So that's always nice to have. Okay, Lauren, how about you? Can you talk a bit about how you've been building the collection strategy and things like that?
Yeah, so I'm glad we got to, simultaneous use perpetual content because Vermont did start its statewide collection with use of ARPA funds. We did need to purchase perpetual license content. And then we just took that as our approach going forward, really for the longevity of the material and to be able to stretch our funds. With that being said, of course, that does kind of limit what content we get. But with the perk of using a vendor neutral platform, we can aggregate content from multiple places, allowing us to purchase from both Baker and Taylor and the Palace Marketplace and BiblioBoard. So at the moment, we have over 4,200 ebooks and over 3,700 e-audiobooks. And that's not including the 15,000 high quality public domain titles in that Palace open bookshelf. But a really important aspect, since we were doing a statewide collection, we purchased a range of non-English language ebooks. We have around 1,000 ebooks in Arabic, Farsi, French, Spanish, Ukrainian, Urdu, and Vietnamese. And these are very unique collections for the state. And it with our state, Vermont library budgets can be a little thin for robust English language content, let alone non-English materials. And our vendors have been really great in sourcing high quality non-English language content to support libraries serving their migrant worker communities, existing refugees, and new Americans in our state at no cost to those libraries. So we've gotten some really good feedback already from libraries that can increase the depth of their e-content offerings and really diversifying what they're presenting to their community members.
Great. And just so I'm clear, what I'm hearing is that you're able to get content from a lot of different sources, but then have it all end up in Palace. So you can go out and actually build the unique collection for your community.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then libraries also can, purchase content that goes right into their feed as well. So it really works very collaboratively, which we like with state funds.
Great. Okay, Chris, how's your collection being formed in California?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I talk on this particular aspect of our project quite frequently. So we have actually gone through sort of 3 iterations now of how we are purchasing content. The first one is very similar to what some of what Angela was describing, where we've convened groups of collection development librarians from across the state, and worked to curate a list of titles that were purchased centrally from a physical agent to build the collection. And that's really how we started with our baseline collection when this was funded through CARES funds and ARPA's funds. And similar to how Lauren referenced, these did have to have particular rules around the licensing to be compliant with federal regulations, meaning that they had to be on a perpetual license. They couldn't expire because any software license you purchase with federal funds has to expire during the project period if it expires at all. So since ebook licenses are a software license by name here, they are under those rules. So everything we've purchased with CARES and ARPA funds had to expire never, essentially. Then our next iteration of this came through just regular Library Services Technology Act funds, which are also federal dollars, in which we granted out funds to libraries to make the decisions locally on their own entirely. One of the things that we did with that iteration of our collection development is we allowed them to apply contributing funds to the project, which meant that they were spending local dollars inside of this statewide collection, as well as these federal dollars that were granted to them. And those local dollars did not have to have the same rules as the federal dollars. So we were able to have the libraries choose materials that were on some of the metered access or Mission Impossible style licenses that we hear about. The reference being that it explodes after you read the message, you know. The third iteration that we're on here is actually the project is being done now with patron-driven acquisition through state funding and a program called Zip Books. Zip Books traditionally in California has run through a program where a patron will request a library buy a specific purchase, and the book is shipped directly to the patron's house. We've expanded this to our ebook network here, where now a patron can request an item be purchased for the statewide catalog, and that request will be reviewed and then purchased if it's deemed appropriate, and then the patron will receive a notification that it's available for checkout. So that function right there is a patron-driven acquisition model. All along the way, though, local libraries have been able and have purchased inside of the statewide collection to help bolster their local needs, but also to allow essentially an interlibrary loan of ebooks where they can share their ebooks with library jurisdictions that they're not connected to geographically, creating this statewide architecture of ebook sharing, which is really at the heart of what the project offers.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing because it sounds like you've gone through three very different iterations in content acquisition, and Palace has been able to support all of the iterations pretty seamlessly, I believe. So that's exciting. Bradley, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. You sort of kicked this whole question off with what you said last time, but maybe you've got a few more ideas after listening to everyone else answer how collections are being built.
Well, for us, definitely the process of collection development has evolved a little bit over the time that I've been with the state library. Again, I joined back in 2019. We have 10 focus areas. Those areas really have not changed. But the licensing terms that we tend to go for, I think that's changed a bit. When we first started, perpetual ownership and simultaneous use was something that we were really trying to get access to. The licensing environment did not necessarily allow for that in the way we needed. So we began to look at other licenses. And again, this is where like the Palace Marketplace in particular is so helpful, because we have found, you might order something and it never checks out. So there is a model where you can get 5 checkouts, and it's forever. So however long it takes to get 5 checkouts for audio and ebooks. And so we look for things like that because we can kind of monitor how they get checked out. If they do get checked out a lot, then maybe we'll buy a longer term license. But I think that licensing piece has come into play in a big way. So you have your focus areas, but then you have to look at that environment and see how you can best maximize the limited dollars that you have. So that's the only thing I wanted to add in, is that's something that has become a real big issue for us.
Thank you. And you have this habit of kind of kicking off the next thing all the time. I just want to let everyone know the next session is sustainable content that is going to dive in more deeply to some of these licenses, the Palace Marketplace that you just mentioned with the different kind of licenses there. So I just want to mention that for people who are here to stay around for that. So everything sounds great so far, but I also don't want to pretend that everything is always, rainbows and butterflies. So I'd like to kind of go through with the panel and have them describe some of the challenges that they have with adoption, engagement, maybe challenges with getting staff to embrace the Palace project, and discuss, some of the strategies they use to work through that. Amy, can you kick us off?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge with the first time we launched and with the relaunch was the staff buy-in. Like you said, the biggest question was, wait a minute, so we won't have Libby anymore? They just couldn't wrap their heads around that there would be 2 apps that people could, access their materials through. And so language, I think, was important. Talking about Palace as an adjacent app and not even alternative or other. We didn't want to other it. We were like, it's compatible. This is the way it works. So we found, I mean, with 48 libraries, 71 branches, it was a lot of people to reach. I couldn't get everybody to a training. I did do a couple of online trainings for them, but what I ended up doing was I made a video, like a 5-minute overview video of how it worked. And I had some screenshots saying like, Libby is still here. You do not have to worry about that, but there's also Palace, and kind of walked through how a checkout would work and what that would look like. And that was really, that was successful for us because people could watch it whenever they were, whenever they had the time. We were thinking about our frontline staff who, are really dealing with print books and checkouts and not really dealing with the digital collection, but yet those are the people that were asking to sell this new app and sell this new site that we had. So, I put together packages in addition to the training. We did up some flyers for them with FAQs. We made sure that our site had a whole FAQ page that, I reached out to staff and said, what questions do you have? And then we put those questions on the FAQ for both patrons and staff to be able to look to. In their packages, we put out all the Palace wrap cards that Jill had gotten us with all the information straight from you, so that they had packages of those, like 250 each, they could just put out for their patrons. And then I sweetened the deal. I put some candy in the packages to kind of just, please give Palace a chance. And we got good feedback on that. They felt like they were supported. We weren't asking them to print anything out. We weren't asking them to reach out to Palace and get that information to give to their patrons. It was kind of like, here's your package. You've got everything you need. If you need more of them, give me a call. And that really seemed to work. Yeah, sweetening the deal, absolutely. And that seemed to be successful. And we've had, I honestly, less than 10 patrons reach out and say, like, I'm having trouble. I don't really understand. And it was just a simple, let us help walk you through the app or point them back to the FAQ. So that's how it worked for us. I had just come off of running a public library and working at the Circ desk to cover. So I knew the questions that were coming up from staff previously, like, can't wrap my head around this Palace thing. And I'm just really busy because now I've got a line in front of me. So the more that we could give to them to answer their questions and prep them, that really worked for us.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I think sometimes people can be a little surprised that as the Palace project and as someone who talks about it all the time, we're not coming in to replace something. We're trying to augment and help and just give the library more flexibility. And it can take people a little time to like understand that's just a different way of operating, particularly when it comes to various ebook applications and vendors. So Angela, can you talk about some of the challenges too? And I've heard through the grapevine there were some contests going on in your area.
Yes, and I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, Lisa McKinney, who's on the call. But yes, we did have some great library-led competition on Palace project engagement. So big props to our administrative assistant, Trina. So she works at the GPLS offices and has recently taken on sending out monthly updates to our email list, kind of highlighting some of the notable stats from this month, but also looking at some year-over-year data, particularly because now we finally hit a year mark, so we can do that. And she does a great job of keeping it fun and fresh and just kind of saying, here's the top 10 circing libraries, here's the top 10 titles that have circed recently. And it kind of spawned very organically this funny competition between two of our highest circing libraries. And has really become this whole social media throwdown kind of funny library beef. And we are living for it. It is the best thing ever. I highly encourage you to go and check out the social media accounts for the Hall County Public Library in Georgia and the Middle Georgia Regional Library System. And I will let our smart library staff tell you more about that later on in the summit. We also had a couple of libraries just do some really innovative marketing. We had one West Georgia Regional that styled a video short on Facebook as a dating platform, and each of the ebook providers kind of took on a different persona and was like, "Hi, my name is Libby," "Hi, my name is Palace," and introduced themselves, and it was very, very cute. So we have had some vanguard libraries that have really gotten ahead and made engagement with the app fun, made it very accessible for patrons. I think if I had to guess, I would say that most of them are starting with their staff, to Amy's point. So download the app, play around with it. No, it does not exactly mirror some of your other experiences in other apps, but it is on its own intuitive, easy to use, simple to find material. Some other things that were really interesting to us were where staff have identified sticking points or things that don't function the way they expect them to. It's been really helpful to be able to say, you get a voice in that. So, go over, let the Palace team know, upvote something. There's power in having the Palace Project have its institutional home be Lyrasis. I think that's a huge advantage. Lyrasis, is by and of libraries, and that is functionally different than a for-profit corporation. And so having a voice in the development priorities and being able to, again, upvote or put something in the queue that you think really needs to be prioritized, that's brilliant. And even if it doesn't happen tomorrow, it makes you feel like you're being heard, and your needs and concerns are being taken seriously. And then the last thing I want to mention is that because of just the nature of the times that we are living in, it was really important to us that libraries have a great deal of control over what their patrons saw and had access to. And so Palace was willing to work with us from the jump to allow for title level suppression from any of the content that was being pulled into the app. And so if a particular title that was selected that patrons had access to in X library system did not meet their collection development priorities, they are able to turn off access for that title to their patrons, which is not a utility that, to my knowledge, any of our libraries have had to use as of yet, but it gives us at the State Library a great deal of confidence knowing that if they do need to use that utility, that functionality, it's there for them, and it won't impact their neighbors who are also accessing that same content.
Thanks, Angela, and thank you for mentioning Lyrasis. I think that's a point I want to just expand upon briefly. Lyrasis is the home for Palace, but it's also the home for a number of open source projects and has been for a very long time. So Lyrasis has a lot of experience doing this. I know John Wilkin in our intro remarks talked about sustainability and things like that. So the Palace project is here. It's not going anywhere, and Lyrasis is supporting it on a go-forward basis as we are building it out. So for people who just don't know the history of Lyrasis, it fits right in sort of their wheelhouse of things to do. Lauren, let's talk a little bit about the challenges and maybe how you got through them.
Yeah. So of course, with the adoption side, as multiple people have pointed out, introducing what could look like a second app to librarians who are either already offering content or even just lack the capacity to add a new platform to their offerings is of course a challenge. We have added our public libraries to the Palace project kind of in 4 phases. We currently have 135 public libraries set up on the app out of the 187 libraries that are in the state. So those numbers are getting closer and closer, which is awesome. That has been a goal of ours. But we probably won't get everybody, and we're cognizant of that. we did have the idea of having a statewide virtual library card, which we haven't really talked about yet in this session, but we created the Book Vermont statewide virtual library card about a year after the project launched. And we initially thought about it for just visitors, people who are at the ski resorts in Vermont. But we've realized that now really community members, wherever they are, can access even if their local library doesn't participate in the Palace Project. It also allows librarians to kind of try before they buy, or community members if they want to check out the app, see how it works, and then kind of advocate to their library to join in a more official way. We did have some front porch forum ads placed, which is kind of like a local online listing site, kind of like a Craigslist, but for Vermont, similar to like Nextdoor. And that, directly spoke to patrons saying, hey, there's this other option. If your library doesn't have it, you're welcome to use this Book Vermont library card. It's virtual. And we came up with these little decals, which can go all around the state, and libraries have put them, on little free libraries, just directing people to the app. And if their local library isn't there, they can still access with the statewide library card. So that kind of flexibility and try before you buy has been a really nice way of maybe not convincing, but just being able to show what the possibility could be if a library wanted to join.
Great, thank you. And the virtual library card is a feature of the Palace project too. We didn't talk about it much here. I don't know. We might have a session later where it comes up again. Unfortunately, limited time means we can't talk about every feature that's possible in Palace. So, Chris, can you talk a little bit about the challenges? I know as a longer term user of Palace, you might have a few more stories here to go with.
Yeah, so one of the main challenges we had for adoption in the beginning with staff was actually disinformation. A lot of libraries were concerned that joining Palace would take their local collection of ebooks that they have already in Cloud Library or Libby and share it statewide. The concern was that the materials that they had purchased for their local community would become accessible to communities in California that are not a part of their funding area or a part of any sort of cooperative that they're already engaged in. That disinformation actually still sits out there a little bit. I have had libraries told me they're not joining Palace because when they join statewide projects like this, they tend to give more than they get, which with Palace is kind of a nonsense argument because you actually don't have to give anything at all, the way California runs it statewide. But the other major hurdle that we have had for adoption is really discoverability of the materials in Palace. What libraries really, really want to be able to do is have a web interface or have integration with their catalog to be able to show their patrons what is available on the app. Having to navigate through a personal device like a phone or like a tablet can be cumbersome to do in face-to-face interactions with patrons, but it can also be cumbersome to explain to patrons in mass on how to access the materials. And if you can't see it readily available on a web browser or in a library's online catalog, it's not there. So that type of integration is really, really vital for future successes of the project. And we've seen libraries that have an Aspen discovery layer, which does integrate with Palace. As soon as that turned on for them, their usage skyrockets. The other issue that I would say we've had in regards to adoption and engagement with patrons was the launch of our virtual library card, actually. We did that in March, and it was a huge success for us. It really, really boosted our circulation numbers. Unfortunately, it was a lot of users for Lyrasis. So we ended up breaking a couple of their systems and machines with the influx of use, which is a wonderful problem to have, but definitely something that did create a stumble or a roadblock that we had to overcome. And we've seen the after effects of this adoption by patrons when these new features are rolled out, when the discovery layer goes live, when the virtual library card happens, to the point we spoke to earlier, those patrons linger in the app. They continue to use it, and it sort of proof of the pudding is in the eating. In 2024, the calendar year, we had about 100,000 circulations in Palace for the state of California. In 2025, when we launched our virtual library card, after Aspen had been integrated with Palace for a while, it took us to May to get to over 100,000 circulations. So in less than half a year, we accomplished what we did in circulations in the previous year in total. So we've really seen that the growth of the app and the adoption of it lingers and generates more and more use, which, as I mentioned earlier, benefits the other services the library is offering as well.
Thanks so much for that feedback there, Chris. And I agree with you. The web catalog is something that we are prioritizing to work on, as we know it's important. Discovery is critically important. And a lot of work has been done to handle as the things struggled a bit when we had the spike in usage. It actually was a good thing for us because it triggered it helped us find some issues that we had to address. And like you said, it was a good problem to have. That so many people were trying to use the system that we ran into a couple bumps there. So Bradley, question to you: so challenges that you've run into and what y'all have done to overcome them.
Yeah, well, what they said to start off. I mean, we all have had similar challenges over time, but there is a challenge sometimes getting buy-in at the libraries. And so there's a barrier from us to the patron. So we have a little bit of a wall to get through, that gatekeeper mentality, where we're trying to get connected with the patrons and the staff isn't always helpful. And I was a public librarian for years and, led branches, reference departments, circulation departments. And one of the things that they tended to do at the desk was when a patron came up, they would hand them the Dewey number for whatever they were asking for and just move them along. And I was always trying to say, refer them to our databases, refer them to our ebooks. There's much more than just the books on the shelf. So I think that's a challenge, is trying to get the librarians to take that extra step, to try the app themselves, to become users. And so you have to look for those champions in the community, and we have a few. And one of the things that happens is they start to request items. So my collection development process, I do the collection development. I oversee 99.9% of it, but libraries can reach out to me and say, hey, we have a book group coming up, we have a need for this title, and we'll try to buy them if we can. And in most cases, I would say, really most of the time, we buy what people request, whether it's from the K through 12s, the public libraries, or the academics. No matter what they're looking for, we try to add it to the collection. And then the other thing that we've done is we support reading programs. So we have the All CT Reads program, which is run through the state library. And so that's something that we push out there and make multiple copies available. And I've worked with Lyrasis and Palace Marketplace to kind of be able to get better licensing for multiple copies, specifically for those titles. So that's been a benefit. But summer reading is another way that we buy multiple copies of summer reading titles. We buy Nutmegs, Charter Oaks, award-winning titles, and really publish that we have them with our weekly newsletter and our monthly newsletter. So, there's different ways to communicate it. But to me, it's like people know about a product, but you have to tell them a million times sometimes before they buy into it. So we're always just trying to flood people with information and hope that one time that they need it, the message comes to them and boom, they have it.
Yeah, I've heard the average is like 7 times someone has to hear something before they remember it. So when people are repeating things, they're trying to make you remember something. So we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I do want to go through this one last question, and then we have a few questions in the chat that we'll get to. And we'll start with Amy, but I'd love to know what is next for what you're doing at Palace.
So Rhode Island is currently in the process of evaluating vendors as potential additions to that plug and play digital offerings. We've got an E-Zone Sustainability Committee that released an RFI earlier this year. And so they're evaluating those responses. And one of the major indicators of whether a responder will be asked back for a second round is, are you Palace compatible? Because now that is something that we're looking for. We're not interested in bringing anybody new on that is not compatible with Palace. And so we're excited to see the committee's recommendations. And it feels like we're taking a bit of control back and we're assembling a combination of vendors in a vendor neutral way that works for us, both for our patrons and for our budget, of course.
Great. I love to hear that. Angela, what is next for Georgia?
Yeah, so we are dipping our toes into the summit, the world of ebook summits, starting with a half-day summit as a pre-conference for the Georgia Libraries Conference. So I'm very excited about that. Michael will be joining us for that event. We have a couple of other representatives from other ebook advocacy organizations. It will partly focus on content, but really also focus on the bigger picture of ebook advocacy nationally and which states are kind of leading the way in creative solutions to center libraries as part of the discourse so that you don't penalize success, like Michael said at the top of the hour. And I'm also very grateful to our Palace team and particularly to Micah, who has always been very helpful to us in working with new publishers or publishers that we are interested in sourcing to be able to get more advantageous licenses for us. So things like, hey, this isn't available as a perpetual use or ownership model. Would you see if they would be open to that conversation? If they were, then we would be able to buy, spend a good deal of money with them to help further build out our collection. So those are some of the things that we're most excited about.
Thanks, Angela. You touched on something. One of the things that we see as kind of our mission at Lyris is to push on publishers to offer better terms, better licenses, and try to get them to try new things. So Lauren, same question to you. What's next?
Yeah, so we just began talks to use BiblioBoard and the Palace Project bookshelf for incarcerated individuals in our state institutions. That is a population that the state library serves, so getting kind of a digital solution for them that has been very exciting for us to look at the possibilities of that. And then we're continuing to onboard libraries at their speed and promoting the statewide Book Vermont instance.
Great. I think helping the incarcerated population is definitely bringing access to people who need it and I think can use it. Chris, how about you? What's next for California?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. We are working on our patron-driven acquisition model of collection development here. Have rolled that out recently. It's a lot of manual process right now, so we're going to see how it goes this year and see what needs to be refined. And other than that, we're really just keeping an open door for libraries that are not yet on an instance of Palace to be able to join and promoting the collection statewide, doing whatever we can to drive up use.
Great. Bradley?
Yeah, so for us, it is kind of just keep the ball rolling. We have done so much sort of getting to where we are right now. We want to continue to make sure the virtual library card is something that people know they have an option to take advantage of. To me, again, it's about access. The other thing is academic libraries. We have about half of the academic sites in Palace right now, and we'd like to get the rest. We have that flexibility to be able to do that, so we'd like to bring them on board. And again, that's something that we want to increase both the membership and the usage. And then K through 12s, we have mechanisms to send ebook content to them right now, but we would like to sort of come up with a plan that's through the Palace app to really focus on the K through 12s and get them utilizing the app as well, because that's a huge community here in the state of Connecticut, and we buy so much content that is relevant to their needs and to the curriculum in our K through 12 sites. So that's something we really want to expand upon. And the other thing I want to do is talk to Lauren a little bit about their project to connect with those that are incarcerated, because we are always looking for other folks that we can expand the collection to.
Great. Okay, so I think we have some time. I know we have a few questions in the chat already. If anyone has any other questions, please ask them now. And I think we can start to maybe try to answer a few of those, either as a panel or I can answer them, whichever ones, we'll have to see what they are.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much. What a wonderful panel. It was wonderful. I loved and really enjoyed hearing from all of you. This has been great. So I'll go ahead and read aloud the questions from the chat. The first one is, what is the historical relationship between Simply E and Palace? And that one's probably for Michael.
I can certainly answer this one. So for those who don't know, Simply started out of NYPL to in some ways solve a lot of the same problems that we've discussed here, provide them a place that they could pull content from multiple sources and have a little more control over what they did. Simply, made it a decent ways and it was doing things, but it didn't really have a very clear at the time sustainability model. And what happened was when Palace started with the grant from Knight, the partnership with DPLA, it began with a fork of Simply E. And Simply continued on its own path, and Palace went on a different path. And kind of where we are today is NYPL did Simply for a while as sort of their own thing, and the rest of the community kind of shifted over to Palace as we went forward. And that's the relationship there. They did start from a shared point at some point in the past, but they have deviated quite a bit at this point. Hopefully that answers the question. I don't know if any of the panelists want to add anything there, because I think I know Connecticut and California both were using Simply at one point.
Just to add, one of the greatest virtues of Simply was the patron privacy elements, and I feel Palace has done a really good job of retaining that element. It may not be super vital to a majority of our end users, but as library professionals, it is of an incredible importance.
Thanks for saying that, Chris. It's something that we try to balance on a regular basis because libraries also want reporting. They want to know, books that are read and things like that. So it's a constant kind of push-pull to make sure that, the libraries get the data they need to make the decisions they need to make and to, report that to people, budgets and things like that, but also make sure that we're protecting the patrons and what they're reading.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next up, the next question is, can you place EBSCO ebooks on the platform?
That is a great question. I love that it's asked. We are talking with EBSCO now. If you speak to your EBSCO person, tell them you want Palace, and we will, we'll continue to speak with them. We're really, how integration happens technically behind the scenes, we try to work with anyone who will work with us, and we are working with EBSCO. So we hope to have EBSCO books as soon as possible.
All right. Thank you. Next question, and I think Jill can also speak to this one, Michael. I'm not sure if you'll have an answer, but are there any large trade publishers offering perpetual access licenses via Palace?
It probably depends on what you consider large. I don't think any of the big five are offering perpetual. Maybe one book, one user perpetually is possible on some of them, but not sim use perpetual, I don't believe. And we are going to be talking about that in the very next session if you want to know more details on all the licensing. I don't have all the licensing in my head to talk about it off the cuff, unfortunately. And if you want to add anything, Jill.
Just that we work with thousands of publishers and imprints. It really varies publisher to publisher, format to format. So for Penguin Random House, there are perpetual one user at a time licenses for audiobooks, but not for ebooks. I think we do have a recent relationship with Bloomsbury that allows us to offer perpetual one at a time ebooks, but not audiobooks. So it's a crapshoot, and I think as Michael kind of said before, one of the things that we really look at is our role in this conversation is really advocating for libraries and pushing back on publishers when we go into negotiations and conversations with them. And that's what Micah does on our behalf. So we really appreciate having someone on board that has that expertise, that's able to advocate both on behalf of our team, but also on behalf of our libraries.
Yeah, and I should note there too, I'm of the belief that libraries and publishers should not be at odds with each other. They should be partners and working together. And that's the way we try to approach them, so that everyone can walk away happy, that they got something of value, and don't feel like that they are getting, as Angela then brought up again, punished for being successful. I think that's what we don't want.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And then could you explain the enhancement process for Palace? So we don't have enough time here, but shout out for our session at 2:40 p.m. Eastern called Community Driven Development. We are going to talk through the entire process. You'll hear from a number of people on our team talking through the whole thing. So if you have time, please join us then, or if not, we will record it so you can watch it later. So a little sneak preview. And I think we have one more question. Hold on, Jill, where was the other question? Sorry. I have a lot of windows here. Okay.
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 It's a question about BiblioBoard. Curious about how many of our state stakeholders offer it and how it gets marketed in their catalog.
We can go around the panelists on who offers BiblioBoard. Are we talking about just the collections, or probably just the collections, the content?
That is what I am thinking from
Okay.
waiting from the question.
So who offers BiblioBoard content, which would be sim use, no holds, perpetuals, and option generally, with the BiblioBoard content. And it looks like I think almost everyone raised their hand. And what was the other part of the question? Because I can talk to that.
How it gets marketed in catalog. So I think this is a discovery question.
Yeah, it would be a discovery question. That is a good question. How does it get into catalogs? I think it has the same issue that Chris spoke of earlier, if there's not a web catalog.
Although California does offer a BiblioBoard website as well.
That's correct.
There is the BiblioBoard collection is available on the web, where users can browse those materials, and they can read them live in their web browser too. And that's actually really beneficial because a lot of the materials that we purchased in BiblioBoard are for a school age population. So it's great for school age access and partnership. We've spoken about some of the various avenues of partnerships for this project. So the school age population being able to get the BiblioBoard materials is really great. We've even created a separate young adult or children's collection of BiblioBoard content.
Yeah.
And Michael, I know we're just about out of time, but I just want to also mention that we find in Georgia that BiblioBoard content is a great way to build a deeper collection. So not just a popular bestseller, highest circling, but a long-lasting, robust, valuable, deeper collection that we've all gotten so used to this kind of alternative collection development that's specific for electronic materials. And I love that BiblioBoard allows us to kind of return to some of our roots when we think about what collection development is for a long-lasting, valuable collection.
Yeah, that's great to hear from both of you. Anyone else have anything to add on that? Okay. Well, I think that's time. I don't want the people running the show to pull me off the screen, so I will try to end it now. I do want to thank all of the panelists for their very in-depth answers and discussions. And I hope the people watching and listening gain something out of this to see, how everyone is using PALAs differently, but at the end of the day, trying to solve problems for their communities. And I learned a lot here, to be honest, and I think that's great. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. That was amazing. We really appreciate it. If there are any other questions, please let us know, and we will go ahead and share any questions we can't get to after this. Our next session is about to start here at 1:35. So I'm going to do one last check here. And all right, I think we're all set for now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. We appreciate you all. And we'll go ahead and